This is Calm AF, a podcast for humans who are hard on themselves. A podcast for the overthinkers, people pleasers, perfectionists, and overachievers. I'm Kristen Finch, and I'm going to teach you how to quiet that incessant negative chatter in your head. Because you know what a person with a calm mind can do? Anything they want. Grab your coffee, gorgeous soul, because today's the day you get Calm AF. Hello, gorgeous soul. Welcome to Calm AF. I'm excited to be here with you today. I've been having a really great July. I decided to make it Joyful July because I had a lot of really fun things planned. I get to see a lot of people that I really love and care about this month. And so I just decided to make it Joyful July, doing fun things. I have a lot of live music events that I'm going to, a lot of visits with people that, like I said, that I love. And I do want to point out also, there has also been a lot of shit going wrong. We have had, I'm not going to get into it. I don't even want to get into it. I don't want to give it any more energy, but I am telling you this as a reminder that there's always both, right? Like my Joyful July has had a lot of joy and it's had a lot of garbage, trash that I wish it didn't have. It's both, people. That's what we need to remember. It's both. All right. I'm excited to talk to you about today's episode. This episode is for those of you who feel like you've never really fit in anywhere, at least not like in a really authentic way. This is for those of you who've always felt like you're too much or you're not enough for the general population. This episode is for those of you who have felt like you don't belong. I spent a big chunk of my life feeling like I don't belong anywhere. I remember it really starting for me in high school. I remember sitting in the high school right outside the theater on the floor, looking around, being like, I don't give a shit about the things it seems like everybody else gives a shit about. Like I just didn't. And I remember vividly believing like, I don't belong here. Like it's time to get out of here. Although honestly, if I think back, this not belonging started much earlier than that. I have a memory of telling my friend Danielle, I was probably, I don't even know, 7 or 8 years old. And I had this experience where like I knew something was about to happen before it happened. And I told her like, hey, sometimes this happens to me. I just know things that I shouldn't know. And I don't remember exactly what she said to me, but I remember the feeling that I felt based on her reaction. Like it created enough shame in my body that I held that shit to myself for basically the rest of my life. Like, don't tell people the weird things. Even today, I rarely share my quote unquote weird stuff with people without at least putting on a bunch of disclaimers. Like, this is going to sound weird, but, or like, I'm not psychic, but I can just see some things sometimes. I don't know how, like that has been my life. Although I guess since this podcast has thousands of listeners, I guess I have now said it to thousands of people. But you're my people. Like you're here because you get me. We are already energetically connected. But it's basically this not belonging thing has been happening my whole life. I remember in college really wanting to have deep conversations, like more than I wanted to be going out to the bars. And once I was married and I had kids and I lived in the suburbs, it really just seemed like everywhere I went, I felt alone in the room. I felt alone in the crowd. Every room I walked into, my first thought, it was automatic. It was like just the subconscious. I didn't even like consciously think it. When I walked into a room, I would be like, I don't fit in here. Whether it was true or not, I don't belong here. I don't belong anywhere. That's how I really felt. And that is a very painful thought. It made me run away from a lot of rooms. And I'm sure it kept me from some really amazing people and really amazing experiences because I was just like, before I even, why try? Like, I don't belong here. The more I told myself I didn't belong, the more disconnected I felt, not only from other people, but from myself. Because if you repeatedly think, I don't fit in or I don't belong anywhere for whatever reason, you're too loud, you're too quiet, you're too short, you're too tall, you're too weird, then the message you are hardwiring about yourself is that who you are must be wrong. If you don't belong anywhere, then you're obviously the problem. And because humans are wired for survival, and survival means not being separated from your pack, then you spend your time trying to be something you're not and someone you're not. You get further and further from who you really are until you stop. Sometime in my early 30s, my kids were little, I decided that I was tired of this. I was tired of not having people that really got me. And so I was just going to start saying things I would normally hold back on, or telling myself not to say, like, don't say that, she's going to think you're weird. Like if I'm sitting with someone and we're talking about the weather, I might casually change the subject to near-death experiences just to see what would happen. And here's what I found. Most of the people totally went there with me. And the ones who didn't, the only thing that I made that mean was that this person and I were not a fit. It wasn't me as a universal truth, I don't belong. It was that I just don't fit with this one person. I fit in the places that are right for me and with the people that are right for me. The more women I work with, the more I see this is actually a really universal belief that so many women have. Like most of us are telling ourselves that we don't belong. Most of us are starving for real, authentic connections and deep conversations, but we're all telling ourselves the same thing. Don't say that. They're going to think you're weird. You don't fit in. You don't belong here. They're going to shun you. They're going to take away your pack. And so what do we do about that, right? We go into survival mode and we turn to the safe, surfacey topics of conversation. Okay? I know that most of you right now listening are nodding your head like, yes, this has been my whole life. I want to go there, but I'm afraid, or I just have never felt like I belonged anywhere I go. Okay? If this is you, you believe you don't really belong anywhere, or maybe you truly don't have people in your life right now who get you, or you want more of these people, listen up. I don't care who you are. I don't care how loud or soft or tall or short or big or small you are. You belong. The people who will get you and love you for who you are out there, but there's a few things that you're going to need to change in order to really find them. Okay? And I'm going to tell you what those things are. First, and this is probably the most important thing, is you have to simply stop allowing this thought that you don't belong anywhere, that you don't belong in this room, and that you don't fit in anywhere. Now listen, this is an automatic thought for you, so it's going to pop up, but you don't have to make it a whole thing. Like you don't have to make it a project, write in your notebook, how to not believe this. No, we're just going to decide. It's not true because it can't be true. And every time this thought pops up for you, instead of making it a big deal or believing it, you can just remind yourself, oops, not thinking that thought anymore. That thought has kept me from this thing that I really, really want, which is to feel like I can just be myself, to feel accepted with a group of people, to find people who get me and accept me. You just have to stop thinking the thought, or when it shows up, because it's automatic, just remind yourself, no, we're not doing that anymore. Because if you walk into every room thinking I don't belong here, you will be right. Not because it's true, but because that thought will cause you to shrink yourself down and leave the room. One of my favorite thoughts, I have shared this with so many of my clients. I'm like, borrow this thought. It has changed my life. The thought is, I belong in every room I walk into. Followed by, my people are all over the place. I just have to let them see me. This is the biggest thing. If you aren't showing up as your true self, they can't find you, right? you can't find each other, you and your soul friend, your weirdos, right? Like you can't find each other if neither of you is willing to make the first move and to be the one to put yourself out there. So you be brave. You decide to embrace and love and accept all your weirdness. If you keep showing up with, I don't fit in, then you won't. Okay? So that's the first one. The next thing that you can do is to decide how you're going to feel when you already have your people. I want you to imagine yourself surrounded by people or having a group of people that really get you, that you are just safe to be yourself. You don't have to put on any masks or act in a certain way. You just get to show up and be who you are. It's the easiest thing in the world. So how will you feel when you are in that situation? What would that feel like? Will you feel safe? Will you feel seen, understood, loved, authentic, in integrity? How will you feel? When I first started coaching a gazillion years ago, I knew that I wanted to gather these women who had struggled to find a place that they felt safe to be themselves. Most of my clients, obviously, you know what this podcast is about. My people are energy managers, overthinkers, overachievers, people pleasers, perfectionists, approval seekers, because that's what they learned what they had to do in order to survive their lives. And I wanted to gather these people and tell them, like, look, you don't have to do it anymore. Come, come, come. You are so safe here. I love you already. I want you to show me who you really are. Because that's the version that the world needs. That's the version that we will feel connected to. And when I imagine myself gathered with these people, laughing, having deep conversations over coffee, I would feel this overflowing love and just peace, because it was like, oh, I don't have to try. I don't have to think about what I'm saying. I can just say the things. It's a very calm energy. It's calm AF, in fact. So instead of waiting to feel that way until I found people, I just started showing up in that feeling state all the time. I started with my own nervous system regulated, and then I would just go out there, right, and just let my freak flag fly. And lo and behold, so many people would also let their guards down. They would drop this armor that they had put up around themselves to protect them from judgment and other people's opinions. And for some of them, it was the first time that they showed other people who they really were, because I created a safe space for that. And then what happens is, like, they will go off and do that and create safe space for other people to be themselves. You want to start showing up in the energy that you want to be in. The third thing is to learn to leave how it's going to happen up to the universe. So this is one of my favorite stories. I may have told this here on the podcast before. This is one of my favorite stories that came out of my decision to stop believing the thought that I don't belong anywhere and that no one really gets me because there's something wrong with me. And this is how I met my bestie, Amanda. I know a lot of you know her. Either you learned about her through me, or you learned about me through her, or you've heard me talk. We've done a lot of things together. But you might not know the story about how we actually found each other. So this was at that time where I was like, my goal was to find these soul connections, my soul friend. But I was like, how? Like, what do I do now? I know I want this, but what do I do now? And my brain did what brains do, which is come up with the most likely options. Like, I'd be like, oh, I'd probably, maybe I'll find her at Emily's dance class, or maybe in Parker's preschool class, which, by the way, I actually did find a soul friend in Parker's preschool class, not a preschooler, a mom. Or my brain will be like, oh, maybe you'll just meet her at the park. You'll just have a conversation and it'll happen. And I kept meeting really great people in these places, but it wasn't the one. It wasn't like this person who would really go there with me. But instead of letting that, like, all of these people that I met that were nice enough stop me from believing that I'm going to find my people, I just kept being curious and open. So imagine my surprise when I, who lived in Illinois, went to a retreat in Georgia and met my soulmate best friend from Texas. Like, that's the sort of thing that your brain can't come up with. It's not going to be like, well, maybe sitting around thinking about, where am I going to find my soul friends? Where am I going to find maybe if I go to Georgia, I'll meet someone from Texas. Like, your brain isn't going to come up with that. Your brain is limited. It can only come up with things that seem logical or likely. But the universe has just these unlimited amount of options, things that you couldn't come up with on your own. You just have to get out of the way and stop trying to like micromanage how it's going to happen. Okay. The next thing is to trust your body and the signs. Now, I think a lot of time we miss things because we're listening to our thoughts instead of listening to our body or our intuition. So I almost didn't go to Georgia. At this time, we had no money. My kids were little. It was a major hassle to leave them. And my thoughts were like, this doesn't make any sense to go to Georgia right now. Like, are you kidding me? It's going to be harder for you to get everything ready to go. It's just easier if you just stay home. There will be another retreat. You should just stay home. But there was something pulling me. My body was almost like rejecting the thought of not going. It almost felt depressed when I would like be like, oh, well, I'll be fine. My body was like, no, you won't. You need to go. So my body was already telling me. My thoughts were saying, don't go. My body was like, you need to go. And then, now don't judge me for this part of the story, I was watching a Real World Road Rules episode. I don't even know if that's a thing anymore. It was a long time ago. I love my MTV shows, the good ones from back in the day. And all of a sudden something came on the screen and it was talking about casting calls for the next Road Rules Real World. That's hard to say. The casting call was happening in Savannah. So I decided instead of going to the retreat, I would audition for the real world. I'm just kidding. I am just kidding. I took that as a sign that you need to get your butt to Savannah. Book your flight. So I did. I booked my flight. So when I got there, it was definitely like my old thinking of like, I don't belong here. These people aren't going to really get me. They're not going to like me. You need to be on your best behavior, your most socially appropriate behavior. I was already working with that. Like I already knew that's what was going to pop up. So I very intentionally decided, instead of waiting around for people to like come in and be safe and like get their vibe first, I was like, I'm just going to go. I'm going to go wander around the house. I'm going to pop into people's rooms because that is who I am. That is what I would authentically do. And I'm going to introduce myself instead of waiting for people to come to me. Amanda, who was also I don't really belong anywhere, these people don't get me type of a person, had also decided to not believe that thought on this retreat. She wanted to be open. So one thing led to the other. She heard me talking in someone else's room and she decided to come and meet me. And honestly, like it was this immediate like, oh, it's you. Oh, it's you. Oh, it's us. And we ended up sitting next to each other throughout the entire retreat. We were in groups together. We sat at dinner together. And before we left, we set a date to talk on the phone the next Friday. That was February of 2013. And we have had a standing phone date almost every Friday since then. Soul connection. We totally get each other. It's so easy. And that wouldn't have happened if I had decided not to trust my intuition, not to trust the signs, and instead to listen to my thoughts. And also, if I had really gone in there believing you're not going to fit in here either, it wouldn't have happened. So, whatever you've been told makes you a problem. Whatever you're believing about yourself that makes you feel like you don't fit in, that you don't belong in any room that you go into, you're too shy, you're too loud, you're too nice, you're too harsh, you're too this, you're not enough that. I promise you, your people are out there. Your people are looking for you. They can only find you when you show up unapologetically yourself. You do belong in every room you set foot in. Every room. That's who you are. There are no exceptions to that. All right. Also, I guarantee you will fit in any room that I'm in because we already get each other. if you feel like you and me would totally have the best conversations, like we are meant to meet, I have some fun news for you. It's time for a retreat, an in-person retreat. I have not done an in-person retreat in over a year. There's a lot of reasons why that is, but it's time. I am gathering all the weirdos in September 21st through the 24th in Colorado for a Calm AF retreat. These retreats are beyond amazing. This is where soul connections find each other. And you get a lot of fun shit. Registration is open for my Calm AF Life members first. They get first dibs. That's one of the perks. But then if you're on the interest list, you will get like the second round of registration. So make sure if you aren't a member of Calm AF Life, first of all, you should be. Join. We love having new people. But if you're not, make sure you get on the interest list that is in the show notes of this episode. Click on that. And as soon as registration opens for people not in Calm AF Life, you will be the first to be able to grab a spot. The spots are limited. We literally get a giant house in like the mountains. And so obviously there's only so many spots, so many beds in the house. So those spots will go quickly. Make sure you're on the list and you will get all the information and the details when that registration opens. All right. I just love you so much. I, more than anything, just want you to know that you do belong, that you fit everywhere you go, and you don't need to change who you are in order to belong. Like, you belong now. And you really, really open yourself up to finding your people when you let yourself be who you really are in every room you belong in. All right. Love you so much. Have an amazing rest of your week. I will see you next week. If you love this podcast, you will love Calm AF Life. It's a self-paced, lifetime access DIY course that teaches you all the concepts that I talk about here, from nervous system regulation to manifesting with ease. And since we know that true change doesn't happen just because you know what to do, you also get an all-access pass to coaching calls and accountability so you don't stay stuck and you don't give up. The best investment you could ever make is in yourself. Calm AF Life is here for you now. Life's not waiting. Let's get you aligned with your Calm AF self, gorgeous soul. I cannot wait to meet you. Go to KristenFinch.com and join me today.